This is the view of the lateral ventricles from the top. So there's your anterior horn, posterior horn, the inferior horn. And then the interventricular foramens, can't be seen here, but they drain into the third ventricle in here. Third ventricle into the cerebral aqueduct, and then into the fourth ventricle. And there's your lateral apertures and median aperture. So this here is a simplified diagram of the ventricular system of the brain. Here is your lateral ventricle with this inferior horns, anterior horn, posterior horn, interventricular foramen and third ventricle here, cerebral aqueduct, fourth ventricle, central canal, median aperture and lateral aperture. So this is the area where the cerebrospinal fluid first drains into all of these, going down here. When it gets into the lateral median apertures, from here's lateral median, it then finally drains into this subarachnoid space. And we talked about the spinal subarachnoid space, where we said there is the spinal cord surrounded by pia mater, followed by arachnoid matter, and that dura mater on top of that. And here is your subarachnoid space between the pia mater and arachnoid matter. Exact same thing. This is found in the brain, except instead of calling spinal, called cerebral. So cerebral pia mater, cerebral subarachnoid space. So from these portions here, that's where they drain into the spinal and cerebral subarachnoid space. So there's the spinal subarachnoid space and the cerebral subarachnoid space up here, going around the brain. So you can imagine it goes around the brain, and that goes down the spinal cord. And of course, the spinal cord in cross section is this shape, like a circle, and the subarachnoid space and all the other meninges, layers of the meninges. So basically, these three layers together known as the meninges. Okay. So this is the meninges. They're continuous all around the spinal cord. So once it makes the cerebrospinal fluid gets into this subarachnoid space, it pretty much circulates all around the brain. Okay, like so. And it's not just on the back and front; it's all around the spinal cord. Likewise, in the brain, the whole brain is covered by these three layers. So the subarachnoid space completely circles the brain, so it would flow all around the brain. Okay, so you can imagine this three-dimensional illustration. The lines indicate the cerebrospinal fluid, and likewise here. Now, what happens to the cerebrospinal fluid? Where does it go? It has to, when it's replaced, the old ones, or any cerebrospinal fluid that's in this area at the very top of the brain, they drain into a venous sinus. There's a superior venous sinus right on the top portion of the brain. So if you look at the brain from the top view, so there's the two hemispheres, the superior sagittal venous sinus is right along the center. It runs like that. That's top view. Okay? And that's where the cerebrospinal fluid will drains into this superior sagittal venous sinus. This venous sinus is not continuous all the way here, it stops. So basically everything will then drain. The venous sinus then drains backwards into the next sinuses.